Hello and welcome to Aging Matters, a program featuring individuals who talk about aging-related issues of interest to older adults and their families. I'm Cheryl Beversdorf, your host. We all have stories. They often reveal how we have dealt with life and the feelings we have experienced. They capture life's memorable moments and the lessons life has taught us. Beginning with today's episode, and due to the pandemic, Aging Matters TV show interviews will be conducted via Zoom rather than in a live studio. The new program format will feature guests who share the ways in which their lives have made a difference to them and to their community. It's my hope these stories of life will be enlightening and maybe even inspire you to think in new ways about your own life experiences. Today, my guest is Brenda Cox, a longtime resident of Arlington, Virginia. Brenda will describe what life was like for her growing up in Arlington, and she will also explain what led her to become involved in serving older adults and her current work in the Arlington community. So welcome, Brenda, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for having me.
Well, Brenda, I'd like to get started by learning a little bit more about what growing up was like in Arlington. I understand that you were not born in Arlington, but came as a young age, at a young age. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, my family moved to South Arlington, Green Valley in 1951. I was about 3, and I grew up in Dunbar Homes. And today, that was the 3400 block of South Kemper Road. And today, there $750,000 townhomes on that site. But at that point, there was a cooperative there that was built, I understand, for, I don't know, Black families or returning veterans or whatever, but we lived there from 1951 until 1959.
And so in that era, what was it like to live as a minority in the Arlington community?
When we were here, first and foremost, we didn't know that, well, I didn't know that I was a minority. What was life like, we were in a Black community, and it was a strong Black community. We had strong leaders. We had everything that we needed there. Our parents were doctors, we had lawyers, we had teachers. My mother is a retired school teacher. My father was a government worker. But we were a strong Black community. We supported each other. There were a series of churches that were there. The ministers worked together. And during that time, we moved here in 1951, and the issue at that point was racial issues, integration. People were actively advocating to have the schools integrated. Our parents, our ministers, they were on the job in terms of challenging the local government to integrate the schools.
Now, and I just wanted to kind of verify, so in the community where you were living, was that near Shirlington that you lived?
We were right up from the Weenie Beanie. I remember when the Weenie Beanie was built.
Okay.
We just right off a 4-mile run in Kemper Road.
Okay.
And it was a cooperative. Back in the day, there were 2 Black cooperatives that were built in Arlington for predominantly Black people. We were in Dunbar Homes in South Arlington, and on Johnson Hill back there, it's called Arlington View now. It was Carver Homes.
So, but it was a total Black community. Were there any white neighbors?
No, people. Well, I can't say that they were in Dunbar Homes and Carver Homes, and basically in Green Valley. There were predominantly Black communities. I understand from one of my classmates that at the top of Kemper Road, right at the end of our complex, there was a white family that lived there that owned a store. And his name is Clinton Powell, and he interacted and played with a white child there, and they grew up together. But that was, I lived in Dunbar Homes, and I was not aware of that. I just found out as he told the story. But that we back there, evidently it was a white family that lived in the midst of a Black community.
Okay.
And you just lived within your own. The races didn't mix. You went to the, you ran into each other at the store, or if you, but for the most part, you stayed with your own.
And did you or your family members really witness any kinds of activities or have personal experiences that demonstrated overt racism?
Yeah, yeah. In Shirlington was a shopping center that we could shop there, but we couldn't, it was segregated. We couldn't sit at the soda counters. My mother could shop at Nugent's, a store there, but she couldn't try on hats. It was just a fact of life. It's like, you knew what the rules were. We couldn't go to the movies here. Back in the day, the community picketed Arlington Theater because we had to go to DC to go to the movies. So that was the law of the land. That was,
Right.
knew what the rules were.
And as far as where you started school in terms of grade school and high school, where did you go to school, both in grade and high school, and how many students were in your classes approximately?
I went to Charles Drew Elementary School in the Green Valley. I went there from the first through the sixth grade. And we moved when I was in the sixth grade, and the seventh through the 11th grades, I went to Hoffman Boston, which was the Black school, the high school, junior, senior high school for Black students in Arlington County. And I walked to high school, junior high school and senior high school from the 7th through the 11th grades. And in 1965, the county closed the Hoffman Boston Senior High School. So I was bused from Johnson Hill to Wakefield during my senior year in high school. And that proved to be a cultural shock to me. I went from, in our community and at Hoffman Boston, we were a school where you were an individual. People, we were all from the same communities. Our families interacted through the churches and through the PTAs. And the teachers were here, they knew your parents. You were an individual at Hoffman Boston Junior Senior High School. When we got to Wakefield, it was like a culture shock. My class size went from the junior high school class, I guess we had 64, 65 students, and they're saying my graduating class at Wakefield was 800, over 800, 883, 863 people or whatever. And you were a number. You were no longer an individual at Wakefield. You were a number, and it was sink or swim. In fairness to the system, our parents or whatever, they had tried to prepare us for the transition, but it's nothing like being there in a situation where you know everybody and the rules changed. It was a culture shock. It's a culture shock. Just to give you an idea, at Hoffman Boston, you could get suspended for 3 days in the street for smoking cigarettes. Back then, that was before pot. If you got caught smoking, a lot of guys would smoke in the bathroom, cigarettes. But when we got to Wakefield, the seniors had a smoking port. So, it was just a whole new world to us when we got there.
So when you mentioned about your parents trying to help you in the transition, back up a little bit, Brenda, and what was going on in terms of integration in Arlington? Were you aware? You mentioned, I think, one of your neighbors was involved in integration. What kind of activities were happening prior to the fact that you ended up going from Hoffman Boston to Wakefield High School?
Integration was the issue of the day, and the churches, the community, the NAACP, all were working together. The ministers of the churches were all working together for us to integrate the schools. We were involved in court cases. There are pictures in the post of students who were petitioned the courts down in Richmond for integration. Brown versus Board of Education came in 1954. They and Arlington allowed its first students to integrate Stratford in 1959. They finally closed the high school in 1965, and my class, that was a graduating class in 1965, where we had the full school year in an integrated setting. We have documents that document that in 1971, now mind you, Brown versus Board of Education was 1954. In 1971, Arlington was still struggling with how to integrate the elementary schools because the school board and the elected officials did not want to force white parents to send their students to Drew School in a Black community in Hoffman, Boston. That was an issue, and we have documents that document the ministers and the communities challenging the order, Proposition 9, of having to have students, Black students or white students going to Drew School, going to the Black community. And part of the resolution, I think that they developed the Montessori program and made it optional rather than making white parents send their students into a predominantly Black school. But then to counter that, the county bused elementary school students from South 18th Street from the Valley up to Glebe Elementary to go to elementary school to balance out the racial thing, to make it equitable, I guess, I don't know.
So talk a little bit, Brenda, about what was it like? You mentioned already the fact that you came from a class of about 60 students, and now you were suddenly in a high school where there was over 800 students alone in your senior class. But did you sense that you were welcome, you and your fellow students from Hoffman Boston? Were you welcome? How were you treated?
It ran the gamut. It depended on, first of all, we were so isolated, and everybody had their own experiences, and through the years, everybody had their own experiences. Before they closed Hoffman Boston, there were a series of interactions with students. There was a committee of students from Hoffman Boston as well as Wakefield that got together, and they tried to, George Richardson was our teacher, was our principal, and he interacted with the principal of Wakefield to try to soften the blow. We had sessions at Wakefield and at Hoffman Boston where we just sort of interacted with each other to try to soften the blow. And it just depended on where you were, how successful it was. But Mr. Richardson was worth his weight in gold. He worked it, and Mr. Richardson, he died in 2015 when he was 103. But when he turned 100, uh, another student, Will Patali, and I went out to Oklahoma City and interviewed him, and on his experience in Arlington. And one of the questions that we asked him was that, how did you prepare students for Wakefield? And he was 100 years and 1 day or 2 days old. He said he was sharp. He said, "Oh, I wasn't preparing them for Wakefield. I was preparing them for life." And that was the type of support that we had as students. We were individuals, and as much as they could, our teachers at Hawthorne Boston, although we were scattered, they tried to support us as much as they could in our transition to Wakefield.
So, wow, that certainly is prophetic in terms of your teacher as to what life, how to prepare you not only for high school, as you said.
His history was in Oklahoma City. So, back in the day, in early 1900s, what happened in Oklahoma.
Sure.
He came here, and there's an oral history with Mr. Richardson in the library, in the Center for Local History at the library, that it will be interesting for the public to see.
Well, let's bring you forward. Now, Brenda, you've been here since you were 3 years old, and you have this really interesting and history. What changes have you seen in Arlington since as you've been growing up? I mean, what's been most significant for you in your life as to how Arlington has changed?
Arlington has changed dramatically. I grew up in a community that was established by freed slaves, and there were several generations of families there. But now gentrification is alive and well in Arlington, and the tide is changing. And we no longer have predominantly Black communities. We have traditionally Black communities, but not predominantly Black communities. And so the tide has definitely changed, and times are changing, values are changing, unfortunately.
Well, that's true. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you became involved in aging. That's how I got to know you, Brenda, in the aging community. And so give us a little background of what led you to be involved in aging activities in Arlington. What was your background and career?
Well, first and foremost, my career, in my former life, I was a librarian, and I read. And I just think that information is very important to people. At one point, early in my career, I was the adult institutions librarian at DC Public Library. And as such, I took the bookmobile to Lorton Reformatory. And I just thought that information is important. And as my mother started slowing down, I found out that Arlington has wonderful resources for seniors. And she was slowing down. She lived independently, but she needed assistance. And I was just searching around, and the girl I grew up with worked at the Agency on Aging, and she told me about it. And so I just explored that. I took a session that the county had, the Arlington Leadership College or whatever back in the day, where they informed community people about all of the Arlington government agencies. And at the end of the session, we were to identify a topic that we wanted to pursue. And I identified the aging. So they put me in contact with the leaders of the Office on Aging and Disability Services. And they said, well, they had to do it because the county had mandated that they do it. So, well, okay, so what's up? What are we going to do? So I told them, I said, I found out that you all have wonderful services that are available to seniors, but people don't know. And they said, oh, well, what you going to do about it? And I said, well, um, we need to let people know, break it down. People had senior fairs or whatever, but with my working with the public, I know you can have a fair and people like the atmosphere and it's a party atmosphere and everything, but for them really to get the gist of the essence of the different programs that are available, that you needed to break it down into small parts. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So I just started a senior ministry at my church. I just said, if you come, I'll make it worth your time. And I started having sessions and having representatives from the county to come and talk about one topic a month. And I tell the people, if you can't use it, if you don't need it, take it to somebody that does need it, your neighbors, your family members. And it took a while because back then people first and foremost did not want to be old. And they definitely did not want anything from the county and the Black community, county welfare, whatever. But I just emphasized to the members of my church that your tax dollars are paying for it. And if the Lord willing, you're going to be here and you're going to need the services. So you need to take advantage of it. Don't let other people just take up services that you're paying for. And slowly but surely, people have come to a realization that they need the services and they have passed it on. And it's proven to be invaluable, not just to the seniors, but to their children. And that's a benefit that I hadn't anticipated because in this area, so many people come from other areas, but there's an agency on aging in every zip code in the country. And in 1965, the year I finished high school, the Older Americans Act was passed, which established this agency on aging. It's an elder care locator number that they can call, put in the zip code, and be connected directly to the local agency on aging, wherever their parents are. And I just emphasize once a month for the last 18 and a half years, come and we give you information that you can't afford not to have. And it's proven beneficial to our congregation.
So here we are now in this present day in COVID-19, what's been the greatest challenge for you insofar as interacting with the members of in the senior ministry at Lomax?
Hands down is the isolation, the fact that you just can't see people. We have been, I go to Lomax AME Zion Church on South 24th Road, and we are, like other congregations, having Zoom meetings and Zoom services and whatever to keep in contact with people. And but the biggest challenge is the isolation. Right. That you can't get out. We don't know who we're dealing with.
So we're almost out of time. Brenda, give us a little bit about your thoughts about racial relations in the Arlington community now, whether it's your church or just overall. What would you tell us?
I think that we're in flux. Times are changing. I think that Arlington, with it being so close to the nation's capital, I think, don't assume that all is well. If you read the paper now, it's like somebody flipped a switch, and we should not take it for granted that all is well in Arlington. We have an active community. The parents, especially in our schools, have issues that they are concerned about. I'm sure I hope people are doing the best that they can, but Arlington is in a state of flux. I don't know what I'm looking at. This is not the county I grew up in. So we are, you know, we're in transition, and we need to be aware that everybody's need is not the same, and we need to know what we're looking at, and just don't assume that everyone is on the same page, on the same level as you. I'm just one Black person, but just as a community, and I would encourage people in my community, in the Black community, they are vocal. They're speaking up. If you read the paper, there's a younger generation of parents that are advocating, especially in the schools, for 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 students. I have heard that, well, through the years, with integration, the few Black teachers that we had were scattered throughout the system. So, recruitment of Black teachers, sensitive to the needs. In fact, not at this point, it's not even a Black and white issue. We are an interracial, international community, and we need to respect everybody's ethnicity. And first and foremost, we're human beings. We all bleed red.
Well said. Well, I want to thank you, Brenda Cox, Arlington resident, for joining me today. And I want everyone to know that this program is broadcast Sundays at 5:30 p.m. and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on Comcast Channel 69 or Verizon Channel 38 in Arlington, Virginia, or streaming live at those times on arlingtonmedia.org. Aging Matters is also on the radio. The program is broadcast every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on WERALP Arlington 96.7 FM. And you can listen to all Aging Matters radio programs by visiting either mixcloud.com/Aging Matters or tiny.cc/Aging Matters archive. And finally, both radio and television Aging Matters programs are posted on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Aging Matters WERA. Thank you for watching the program today. Please join me again for the next Aging Matters show. And until then, remember, age is just a number, not a label.